Why can't you operate like that? Sometimes we've also got to realize our business will have its own way of operating and its own way of being efficient at maximum.
There's a few things that obviously remote work got right in terms of helping people manage their own personal life and business life, or personal life and work life.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's UncommonCents number 103. I was absent last time and I'm very happy to be back with my good friend and co-host Dean Holmes, as today we go through, can you believe it, remote versus hybrid versus full office. So today, Dean, we're basically stepping into culture wars meets productivity theatre meets leadership identity crisis. And this one could go anywhere, my friend.
Absolutely. And can I just say, for purposes of the entire recording, we are both currently from home working remotely as well.
Yes, we are.
So, not that that should lead the discussion in any particular way, but let's go for it, Craig.
Actually, normally at home, I'm in the office, Dean. So what I decided to do was move out there and work remotely within my home.
Very good. You can have that flexibility to choose your workday and choose where you work from as a result. But obviously, the concept of working remotely for knowledge workers, which is what we're talking about today, has been around for a very long period of time, well before COVID. But as we know, COVID accelerated this position of having this flexibility. And in addition to that, obviously, with the continuous technological advancements, the talent now is global. So the idea that we've got remote teams working not only in Sydney and Adelaide, as our example is, but also overseas and all around the world to potentially have a 24-hour operation. We do know, as you said in your intro there, Craig, culture and connection are impacted or could be impacted as a result of this. And so we'll talk through a couple of examples as well around that happens. And obviously today's goal, I think, Craig, is just to get an idea, not that one is right or wrong, but what I want for our listener through this process is to make sure that they've made an active decision on what it's going to be and why, and then they can commit to that. The accident that happened with COVID was a time-sensitive event, why everyone said, go and work from home because we don't know what's going on. Whereas we do, as business owners, need to take a stand and reset that position and then decide for the business what is the right rhythm and the right opportunities for the staff. Let's dive in, mate.
Yeah, and I think, mate, a good overlay for this, right, is that lots of businesses will have lots of different ways to do this. But we've all got one thing in common, and that's team members. And what our team members are doing is they're getting exposure to all sorts of things that other businesses are doing. And I must admit, I think it's died off a bit now, but there was at one time where to be a cool kid, you had to have on LinkedIn, oh, look what we're doing for our team. We're letting them and not only sit at home, but they could sit at the beach, they could do this, they could do that. Now, that's probably died off a bit, but I think what we've got to do as business owners is remember we've got to support each other, because one person's business might need every person sitting in that office for it to function. Yep. The other one might not. So when you're shouting that from the treetops, you've got the poor other business who needs everyone in. Their team is sitting there going, why can't you operate like that? Sometimes. So I think we've also got to realize our business will have its own way of operating and its own way of being efficient at maximum. But let's support our brothers and sisters in business too, who may not be able to do that, and just keep it as balanced as we can it's horses for courses, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so first and foremost, the good things about remote work, or what we got right through that process, is firstly, I think the idea of the deep focus work. If you go back before COVID, essentially what people would say is that I'm going to work from home on Thursday because I've got something important to do. I've got to focus on a particular task, and there's no one going to be around me to annoy me when I go and do that. And whilst the reasons for working remote might be different today, the concept of going, how do we achieve the objective of deep work is really interesting, Craig. Whether you want to ask your team to have a hybrid or office environment, they still need to do this concept of called deep work or focused work. And if people were getting that at home and then you want to bring them back into the office, you have to create an environment whereby they can still do that deep work.
It is interesting because you mentioned COVID before, and I think if you read through some studies and stuff, there was talk about how productivity went up. But I was reading something else in prep for this, then I was looking at somewhere, and another person was saying, what I wonder though is, was that actually sustainable, or was it like this adrenaline hit all of a sudden? Like
Yes.
it's, oh, this is new, I'm working from home, this might be a bit exciting, it might be whatever. Then that's why is that why the productivity went up? Like I'd like to almost measure it now and see.
Absolutely.
Is it the same, or is it a bit?
Maybe it was just there was nothing else to do as well, Craig. So it was a productivity by virtue of everyone worked a few extra hours, and so the volume of work was up as well as a result, as we know. But I'd love to say that there's no commute, obviously, if we're doing remote work.
That's true.
Positive for lots of people. And if we're really honest, everyone puts a load of washing on. Okay,
100%
so
they do.
The reality of this idea when we think about remote working is that there has to be that flexibility that everyone puts a load of laundry on when they're working from home. And anyone that tells you that they don't is either lying or doesn't do the laundry.
Correct.
One of the two.
And it's true. It's going to happen, isn't it? Because it's easy. It's there. It's a minute task to put it in and push the button, and then you can get back here. And
absolutely. And you can't
my machine's just beeping.
You can go into it. Mine's got 10 minutes to go, of course.
Okay.
So there's a few things that obviously remote work got right, Craig, in terms of helping people manage their own personal life and business life, or personal life and work life through that process. And it did prove the fact for lots of businesses that standing over the shoulder micromanagement was not necessary to get results. And I think that's been really helpful for lots of different roles of jobs. The whole thing of going, doesn't matter what level you were, you could actually prove that you got your work done without your boss looking over your shoulder to make sure you got your work done.
Yeah. And I think, mate, for me, like working from home, it is brilliant for tasks. For those, put your head in, no one's going to come past and tap on the shoulder. Can I talk to you about this? Can I talk to you about that? Although Teams is getting good at that to turn your notifications off. But I jest a little bit. But the bit I worry about, and this is why I think balance, we're probably going to end up, skip forward to the end, we'll probably end up at balance and hybrid. But I'm not sure it's great for innovation and that type of stuff.
Yeah, so that's a category of what do we lose, what have we lost as a result of moving down and further down this path to potentially 100% remote working. Is the first thing that I think about is like the incremental learning and iteration. So learning is like when I think about when I first learnt to talk to clients as a junior advisor, the way in which I learned how to talk to clients is I was sitting physically next to 4 advisors and I was listening to their phone calls, because back then mostly they used desk phones, and so I could hear one side of all the conversations. And so we missed that incremental or incidental learning by just not being immersed in it in that way. Now, not everyone learns that way. So for some people, being surrounded by 4 phone calls may have been impossible to learn from because of that particular individual. But for me, it was the immersive of the learning that I wouldn't have got otherwise. I think the structure of onboarding, I talk about this when we talk about bringing on remote teams in the Philippines, is that we find it harder to train people remotely as well. And so what I mean by that is that if we were working together, Craig, and I wanted to show you something and we were in the office, I'd be just, Craig, drive your chair over next to mine and let's look at the screen together and let me show you what I'm talking about in terms of teaching you something. Now, it's entirely possible to do that with your remote team. It's called Teams and it's called screen sharing, but we actually forget to do it.
Yes.
So one of the lessons of if you do have these remote teams is that you still need to train them in the same way that you did if the humans were in the office. So the 2 examples of that for me is the screen sharing is one. Hey, let's look at something together and work out how to do it. And the second thing is immersing people in meetings, client meetings, not meetings for meeting's sake. And so if you were a junior in the office, you would get dragged into meetings to hear what was going on with clients before you were ever going to be ready to talk to clients or present to clients. And so that idea that you bring in a staff member to your client meeting so that they can get exposed is a little bit foreign in digital, but completely practical if you're all in the office. And so this idea that you say, I'm going to bring my junior into this meeting today so that they can observe and learn, you can add them to the Teams meeting and they can do it. You just have to think about it in this world of making active decisions to work remotely.
Yeah, and I think you're right, mate. A nice summary to what you said is we've got to be careful we don't accidentally kill the apprenticeship model by having everyone at home. Because you're right, sometimes it's just a matter of I just listen to you on a phone call and hear how you handled that. Now, I wouldn't, and it wasn't even like you said, Craig, listen to this phone call. It's just that I picked it up and went, wow, the way he handled that was really good. And Correct. If I'm not there, I would have never, ever heard that phone call.
Absolutely.
So it's this, you're just got to be a little bit careful there.
Yep, absolutely. Obviously, the other thing to consider with this remote, and it's obviously with hybrid as well, it could be more dangerous with hybrid actually, but the technology and security gaps that can happen with remote working. Obviously, we keep coming back to COVID just as our kind of event that we talked about. Everyone just took their laptops home and connected to their home Wi-Fi and kept working. But there's definitely the idea of some security analysis and gap analysis needs to be done. If you're making a business decision that every staff member is going to permanently work from home, the computer structure and security might be different to if your team is completely in the office. And so that's something definitely to consider as part of the process. Obviously, with hybrid, you've got that additional risk of physical computers in transit, i.e. your employee can take their laptop wherever they like, and there's a bit of a risk with that as well.
Definitely.
Let me tell you about the funny story of hybrid, Craig. So hybrid is this thing in the middle whereby everyone is just coming into the office. Compromise, or it's that thing where we can't convince people either way, so we just have to deal with hybrid. So what is the two most frustrating things with hybrid that I've been told about is frustration number one, I went into the office today to have meetings and everyone else decided to work from home. So I spent the day in the office on Teams.
Yeah.
Bit silly. So that's frustration number one. And number two, for larger firms, I went into the office today and there weren't any desks. Frustration number two.
Frustration.
So hybrid
this is almost the worst of both worlds, Dean.
I know that. Both is awful, and they obviously get in there, no desk, and they've either got to turn around and go home or work unsecured at the local cafe on Wi-Fi, and that's obviously not good either. So this thing about hybrid is it needs to be a much more active decision, not only around the time that people are coming into the office, but also what type of work is happening when people are in the office. Okay, so we're not all going to the office to do deep work where we're not talking to anyone, because that can be done at home. Maybe we're coming into the office 2 days a week that we just do client meetings and nothing else. So we're connecting not necessarily with our colleagues, but with our client community through that process. Or you're coming in and you're just doing team building activities, but the collaboration of coming together is really important. Nothing would frustrate me more than those examples of I'm coming into the office to collaborate with my colleagues only to find that I can't collaborate because they're at home.
Yeah, the hybrid model needs to be very specifically designed, doesn't it? It really does.
It is the hardest. And because it's these frustrations that can happen from the employees is one thing, the examples we spoke about. But also on the flip side, I believe that sometimes the manager or the advice practice owner, whichever one it might be, the manager is dictating the days in the office or the need to be in the office 2.5 days a week, as we've heard, or 3 days a week. And the management of that is becoming incredibly difficult as you have younger staff that perhaps want the flexibility in a different way.
So if we've had hybrid, Dean, and we've had work from home,
let's go old school.
Let's go old school. But is this, Dean, a return that are we mandating this because of culture, or are we thinking about long-term leases and CBD economies?
Yes, capacity utilization is an interesting thing that I think about from time to time. And so If you have an office that's only used 3 days a week, and there's 7 days in the week, it's a very low use of an asset and a high rent per hour as a result. So it does change the thinking from your profit and loss, because everyone moved to open plan offices because, let's say, the CFO realized you can have more bums on seats when everyone left an office. Obviously now everyone's going, I've signed a long-term lease, I need to resolve that. But if it was not the financial side of it, you've got to be cautious once again of the intention of why you're bringing the team. Why do you want your team in the office 100% of the time? And the reasons, the negative reasons around rent is obviously something to avoid, or definitely not communicate as your real reason.
The funny one I saw though was, if collaboration is the goal, why did we sit in cubicles for 20 years?
Correct. Yeah. It was, yes, absolutely. So
I know we don't now, but
we don't now. That's the thing of the walls going. The thing is, when you go into if everyone goes into the office to work, but they put headphones on to concentrate, how is the collaboration happening, or how is the incidental learning happening anyway? And so need to be making sure that we're not making the decisions for the negative of micromanagement, observing what's going on, leasing related reasons. And from what I've heard, the offer of a free lunch or a pool table or a incentive from that perspective to come into the office is not really that appealing for the vast majority of people. And so definitely, as we've hinted at, the reasons why you're bringing the team physically together is the apprenticeship. So I do appreciate the idea of a professional year being done with an advisor physically there. I know that in Absolute, as my example, it was harder to do a professional year remotely. We had to do it during COVID anyway, but it was harder to do a PY during, it's harder to do a PY during remote, because it's hard to know when you should speak versus letting the professional year candidates speak and back and forth. So there was a bit of learning that we had around that as well. But the real reasons of coming together, Craig, need to be things around that the team gets more work done in a collaborative manner in a shorter period of time, first and foremost, and the clients also want to physically come into the office. And that's been an interesting example as well, is just because you all want to come into the office and work, do your clients actually want to come into the office to meet you? And if you honestly gave them the choice, would they prefer to have a Teams meeting with you, even though you're in the office?
And it's an interesting one. Like, I actually think clients have taken an interesting strategy with this. They want to come in and meet you, but they actually want that interaction to be more social. They're very happy to have the, let's get down to business on a Teams meeting, give me my review, tell me where we're at, tell me what we're doing. But if I'm popping, I almost want it to feel more social. Correct. And I wonder if we change the way we actually meet with clients and what we're talking about when we meet with clients.
Yes, and the frequency may change as a result. That if you're saying that I want to have a client meeting for connection and direction, relationship building, then that may be once a year, or maybe even twice, like every 2 years for the connection and direction. And that for me is, you're almost sitting on a lounge chair with your client, having a conversation over the traditional cup of tea. It's a much more relaxed conversation with another human versus here's my spreadsheets and forecasts and those type of things, because some of those spreadsheets and forecasts are better delivered in a meeting, in a screen shared type meeting. And then you can also manage the frequency of your interactions differently. So I see a world where you have that connection and direction meeting, and then you may have more frequent 30-minute meetings with your clients throughout the year, because that's a respect to everyone's attention span. The fact that we have 2-hour meetings, Craig, it's very disappointing for everyone, because it's a long amount of time. And if you quiz the client at the end of 2 hours, they can't remember it all. It's too long.
And the other things, I guess, to continue on, Dean, is if we are in the office, whether it's with clients or, of course, each other as part of the team, it's the energy transfer is more real there, right? So you think about the things like body language. You're going to know if you're sitting next to me versus here a lot more if I'm a bit down or a bit up, because you're only capturing me for a moment here versus how I'm looking all day. Like you said before, the drive the chair over for the side conversation, I know sometimes there's nothing like that whiteboard moment, like where you can actually just quickly jump in a room together and scratch something up and just have a chat. And then obviously the emotional contagion of the firm, depending how people are at and what they're doing. So that stuff doesn't happen online. You need to be together for that sort of emotional transfer and energy transfer to work.
I agree with you, Craig. However, I don't think it needs to happen every day.
No.
So this is where if you're in the camp of hybrid / remote, you can achieve lots of what you just spoke about with some consistent time that people come together. And so depending on how spread out your business is in terms of geographic, the idea that you commit to coming together at a certain frequency, I think, is key. And if that's coming together for a particular team day once a month, once a quarter, or less, depending on the business. But the idea that you're getting together regardless of your location is pretty key. Like we go to Cebu once every 2 years, for example, see the team over there for a connection and a conference, and that builds that connection. And then when we're back at our digital desks, we can still leverage that as a result. So it doesn't necessarily have to be more frequent than that. But we're not going there just to do emails. We're going there to build the culture and embed some behaviors into the business. We're not just going to do work, okay? Which is the difference, which is key when you're organizing this hybrid or remote, is you're still working out when you're coming together in a structured manner. And sometimes you do it better, Craig, in the structured manner, because you commit to the timeframes. And then you have a very strong agenda for those times. So when you're in the office all the time, there might be the negative kind of things that happen because you chitty chat about something all the time. Whereas if you're just coming together once a month, all those problems get saved for a particular structured day to have a proper conversation around them.
Yeah. And I think, mate, as long as it's done right on both sides. So the office and whoever's leading that business knows how to set it up and what requirement they want and how they want it to work. But then if you're working within an office, and you know what, here comes my controversial moment, stop being completely entitled that I actually should have that. Work with the business and go, you shouldn't actually have anything. If you want the job, you should actually just do how that business operates if that's where you want to work, to be quite frank. But so don't go in with that entitled mindset of, if I'm going to work here, I should be able to work home 3 days a week. It might be 2. It might be one. It might be whatever. But yeah.
You've got to have a policy, Craig. If I'm interviewing you and you say to me, what's the style of this business between our words, remote, hybrid, and office, you have to have an answer for it. And if the answer is office, great. It's pretty easy thereafter. But you can't, if I tell you it's office, you can't accept the job and then 3 weeks later say, I'm going to work from home 2 days a week.
Yeah.
So that's not fair on the employer, but definitely the employer's obligation is whatever the answer is, you have to have a clear structure. So when I look at you, Craig, and say, we're a hybrid business, which means we're 100% in the office on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, that's where we do our client-related work and our meetings, then you can't change that as a single individual. You have to appreciate that's the model. Okay.
Yeah.
Just if we agree that we're all 100% remote. However, once a quarter, we all need to fly to a location for 2 days. And so you need to know that we do that once a quarter and be willing and able to travel physically to do that, even if you live in Cooper Pedy.
Correct. So I think some summary points for me, Dean. There's no doubt that the best talent in the market is going to demand flexibility going forward because it exists now, and we need to look at how we work with that. But the best cultures are probably going to demand presence as they work that through. But maybe it's this shift, and there's clubhouse offices in the future, which already do exist now, which they're the spaces for intensity, not attendance, but it's the space that you come to do those things that we've mentioned as we've trickled through.
Yeah, absolutely. And my real thing is pushing it back onto the leaders, being really clear on there is flexibility, but it's not random flexibility. And that goes both ways, is that I'm not giving you random flexibility, nor do you decide on any one day whether you feel like going to the office or not.
Yes.
That's not what I think of hybrid, is that it's not a feelings thing. It's a cadence within your business. Whatever the business decides, everyone drops into that cadence really well. That, I think, strengthens the culture, as opposed to the culture can be negatively impacted when it's just loosey-goosey. You can do whatever you want. There's no structure to the business. And I really find that
awful.
That's the weirdness. And think about it from a client perspective. Imagine if your client rocked up to a meeting in the boardroom and you had decided to work from home that day. And so the client is sitting in your office, but you've dialed in.
You've dialed into the
right. And so it's just weird. It happened to me once, but that's when I was living overseas. And so I was in Turkey and I had a client come to the office in the CBD, and we did a first meeting where I was on the digital board and she was sitting in the office. But it was weird. It was actually really
weird. It's weird.
And so you wouldn't do that in that scenario. So why would you do it in the business scenario to your colleagues or your boss? That's the kind of the bit that I'm thinking about, which obviously focuses on the leaders in terms of setting this culture. And then my final point is really around the communication overall, is that when everyone is working remotely, there is a chance that there is more communication moving back and forth. You spoke about the Teams messages before, Craig, and that's a really useful one. One funny story that I have around this in the VA Platinum example is they committed at a culture level to stop sending the last email if the last email was thank you. Okay.
I like it.
And so it's just an example of understanding the amount of volume of communication that can happen. And trust me, Craig, I say thank you all the time, right? But you don't need to say it after every single task.
No.
And so if 700 staff were sending 5 emails a day with thank you, for example, 350 times that emails have to get deleted because it just said thank you. And so I think there's a really good opportunity whichever path you take is actually working on the focus of how the teams are communicating. Use your sporting analogy of how the constant teams are communicating is really important for practices overall, regardless of how they've chosen. How the teams talk is pretty key overall.
Great way to wrap up, mate. I think that's
it, mate.
Summary.
30
number 103
is our good. We're working remotely and it's Friday. We can knock off early, as they say, on Fridays because I'm working flexibly. But thanks very much for listening. That was 103 of UncommonCents. As you can see, we're relatively well organized, Craig, for the 2026 year. And so we do have multiple events booked in on LinkedIn. We know what we're talking about in advance. So perhaps we're starting a new normal, Craig, of being really well organized. So
look at that, mate. And before we go, don't forget to hang out your washing after this.
Yes, correct. Yours finished first, but all good. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.